is Dr. Michelle Thompson. I'm the Medical Director of Lifestyle Medicine for the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, as well as Associate Professor at the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine. I am here today to talk about emotional eating with my team, and I am going to introduce you in a circle. So I'm going to introduce you first to Sophia.
Hi, my name is Sophia Bazanis. I'm a fourth year medical student at the University of Pittsburgh, currently on my integrative medicine rotation.
And next, Dr.
Hello,
Grist.
I'm Dr. Austin Grist. I'm a third year resident from UPMC Shadyside Family Medicine. I am on my lifestyle medicine rotation.
And lastly, our moderator, Jonathan.
Hello, my name's Jonathan Lee. I'm a third year medical student at Lake Erie College of Osteopathic Medicine. I am here as part of my family medicine rotation.
And so this is kind of classic for what we're doing here at UPMC. We have our family medicine, lifestyle medicine, integrative medicine, and we are really changing the future of healthcare by having these thoughtful conversations. And today we're going to talk about emotional eating because, oftentimes we are not eating because we are making the choice to eat. We're just mindlessly eating. I want to share with you, there is a 1-hour podcast called Mindful Eating, and that is available to you if you just Google Dr. Michelle Thompson, Mindful Eating. That is available for you to watch for that full 1 hour. But today, Jonathan is going to share some ideas and thoughts about questions that you may have about emotional eating. And I'm going to turn it over to him.
Yeah, this partially comes from personal experience with myself and seeing other people I know go through using food as comfort. It's a very emotional, deeply rooted like aspect of everyone's life. For example, we associate birthday cakes with birthdays like events. A lot of, let's say, not the most nutritious foods we associate with key aspects of our culture, of our society, and ultimately it kind of, we tie a lot of emotional comfort and regulation to food. And I think it's good to acknowledge, first of all, like what are the most common emotions that are tied to like emotional eating and then overeating.
So I think that what is very fascinating about this conversation about emotional eating is the way we were raised plays a big role in this, right? So for some of us, that cookie means love because maybe we didn't really feel love from our family, but they gave us the cookie and we're like, oh, they do love us, right? So for me, growing up in an Italian household, pasta is love. I stopped eating meat 34 years ago, so eggplant meatballs are now love to me. I don't eat regular meatballs. That's probably the only one thing that is very challenging to get if I don't make it for myself. But even at occasions like funerals and gatherings, like it's still always pasta. That's my family. And so do I eat pasta every day? No. Actually, I don't even buy pasta and have it in my home. It is only really for celebration. And so when we think about, there is an excellent podcast I would like to share with you because it taught me a lot. It actually is about alcohol, and it's called The Alcohol Archetype. And it is Rachel Hart, Rachel, and the last name is Hart, Hart. She has a podcast and it's called Take a Break from Drinking. But when I was thinking about this, the alcohol archetype, her episodes of this are 358 to 366. She talks about the way people use substances for upgrade, as a connector, as a reward, as an escape, as a mask, as a release, as an hourglass, as a remedy. And if we sort of walk through those things with the use of alcohol, we often do that with food as well. So, an hourglass, passing time, right? You're just bored, so you eat. An upgrade, it's a celebration. So, you have that cake, right? My mom always wants me to have cake on my birthday. I don't like cake. I really don't like cake. And I say, well, you gave birth to me. If you want the cake, eat the cake. But you know, so she makes me a beautiful fresh fruit, like she turns it into something beautiful for me. And I enjoy that. And she wants to have the cake, right? So we're all going to have these different ideas around food. And so, in introducing those topics, I'm actually going to invite Dr. Grist to talk about this first because he may not be able to stay with us for this whole talk. So, Dr. Grist, what might you want to talk about with any of these ideas about emotional eating and some of the things we mentioned?
Yeah, so I think emotional eating, it's an interesting topic because it's, it can be ingrained in like a lot of cultures. I mean, some people might say like, I just eat like 3 meals a day to eat meals, but some people like, the food you eat and sort of how you were raised, as you were talking about, like a lot of people got like, those sweet treats or those snacks as like sort of a reward system growing up. It was like, if you clean your room, if you do good on classes, if you finish your dinner, then we'll go get ice cream. And so that's sort of how I grew up. I was someone who always finished his plates. And then if I finished my plates, then I would get ice cream. And it caused a lot of overeating for me when I was growing up. So I've had to really learn how to really limit that. And stress, when stress is like a strong point in life too, like that can cause some significant points of people wanting to eat to sort of cope with that. It's like it's comfortable. You want to have your comfort food. And it's just about finding that balance in that. Knowing that, like, just because I typically like to have like, chocolate or peanut butter or things like that. That's my comfort food. It makes me feel better. You can still really turn that around and just have like good, healthy, nutritious options as your emotional food too. You just have to prepare it right. Recently, my wife and I have been trying to snack a little better, especially if like we're having movies or things like that. Instead of like having like the buttery popcorn and like some chocolates while we're watching movies, for this past week, we've been doing carrots and cucumbers. And the way we prepare the cucumbers is we put a little spice on it, a little pepper, a little paprika, a little chili powder, and it comes out really good. And we can snack on all of those, and we're eating like a fraction of the calories that we typically would. And it's still comfortable. It's still good, healthy food. Doing it with the people that you care about and the people you love, like having those types of foods, you're like rewiring those sort of reward systems, that sort of emotional eating, and how you can really like picture those foods you want to eat. I'm looking forward to eating those more often. That was not something I would really like look forward to. I would choose over like, ice cream or things like that. That is like my emotional eating now.
I love that. And I never thought to do that with the cucumbers. That's so exciting. And you're getting nutrition out of it as well, right? There's not a ton of nutrition in the popcorn. You brought up a really important point that your spouse partner is on board. Not everybody has that. And so, the group medical visits that we have at UPMC in the lifestyle medicine department are built to support you in that space because not everybody has that safe space to come together. One thing I always encourage people when we are doing our teaching kitchens and pantry reset is find a shelf or a drawer or whatever that is yours. And so you could say, this is my shelf. If you don't have a support system in your home that is going to eat the same way as you, not everybody is going to eat the same, right? Not everybody has the same eyeglass prescription. Not everybody's body wants the same thing or has the same likes and dislikes. So being able to create that safe space in your home where you can have your foods and being able to also have the conversations around it because, yes, you're both on board, but maybe one partner's not ready. Sometimes people have these relationships with food because they maybe didn't have food growing up. And also, one of the other things is I was part of that clean your plate club that I had to clean. My grandma did that to me. And then I passed that on to my son at one point. I was like, you have to eat all your food. And then I learned and then I apologized. I said, no, you don't have to do that. So I think the other important thing is that just because we were taught one way doesn't mean we have to carry this on for the future generations. It's by having these thoughtful conversations about it and how can it look different. And so when I just rolled through those topics, one of the topics is we talked about it as an upgrade, but the next one is as a connector. Like if the guys all sit around at the racetrack and drink beer and eat Doritos, actually my husband races cars. He's a drag racer. And do you know what he started doing? He started bringing veggie trays. So now all the guys expect my husband to bring the veggie trays to the racetrack, which is wonderful. I'm like really proud of all the guys when they're eating all their vegetables. So we can rewrite those narratives, So Sophia, what would you like to add in?
Yeah, I think that everybody has done a phenomenal job in covering what you have to say. I think it is really important to note how food really can be a connector for people and just being aware that that exists and families and friends and like your husband at the racetrack and what can you add in to those environments to incorporate healthy eating. Like you talked about adding in veggie trays. What can you bring to the family gathering? What vegetables can you bring? What fruits can you bring in addition to the food that's being served there? And not to remove people from their communities centered around food, but what can you bring to have healthier options for yourself, to have that emotional eating and kind of thinking about, okay, if the cookie is love, what can you add to the cookie when you have a piece of cheese with it? Can you have some vegetables with it? And not depriving people of the food that they find comfort and connection in, but how can you also make healthier choices and fill yourself up a little bit with other foods while still seeking that comfort? Because, like Dr. Thompson said, you do have to eat every day and you can't just cut out food like you can cut out alcohol or cut out nicotine, and making healthier choices while still honoring your connection to food and having a healthy relationship.
Yeah, excellent. And I know Dr. Grist can't be with us for the entire conversation, so I just want to thank him for sharing what he already did. And we're going to carry this conversation on as he exits. So thank you. I think something also really for us to think about is that we have to be able to use our words and be able to change the dialogue surrounding food. You know, I think that oftentimes people think that they're expected to eat certain things because it's there. And I had a pastor once that I was taking care of, and he was like, "Well, I have to eat the pie because the lady from the church made me the pie." Well, you know, he had diabetes, he had hypertension, he had hyperlipidemia, he had obesity, and really he couldn't just keep eating all these things because he was going to worry about hurting the feelings of others, right? So just being able to say, well, this isn't in line with my health goals at this moment. But what does this require? This requires you to connect to yourself and understand your purpose and your why, and to think about your mind body connection so that you're not actually, you know, doing things for others, you're doing them for yourself. And I always say, our body, our choice, our plate is our business. And we should be able to freely communicate that because we're not doing things to hurt other people's feelings. We're doing things to honor ourselves. We only get one body to take care of. And so, how can we do that in the best way possible? For me, I made my changes in my life when I became a mom 34 years ago because I wanted to be a good example to my son. I didn't want him to have to be, you know, the way I was raised. I wanted to do it differently. I didn't know what I was doing, by the way. I was just learning as well as I'm still learning every single day, which is why we have these thoughtful conversations to try to help people just really move the needle in the direction of making good choices for themselves without shame, without judgment, without beating yourself up. And again, that mindful eating podcast talks about that. So if you want to have, for me, the cannoli, like I'm Italian, so like I love cannoli, but I don't eat cannoli, but maybe once every year or something, I may have a taste of it. Eat it mindfully. You know, slow down if you love the potato chip. Eat it mindfully. But oftentimes we're running around and just throwing handfuls of cashews in our mouth or peanuts or whatever. And we're not, you know, I actually will get a beautiful dish that I will have, and I will actually, I have a bowl right here next to me. I'll just show you. I have a beautiful bowl that has blueberries in it. And so just I will eat them one by one, thinking about the history of this blueberry. Somebody grew this, somebody transported this. And then what is this going to do to my body? Utilizing all of my senses as I practice mindful eating, which we won't get a ton into because there's a whole podcast on that. So I'll pause, and Jonathan, back to you.
No, yeah, I'm glad we're talking about this because I remember many years ago, like when I was getting into like bad diets, like, you know, keto, Atkins, any type of low carb. And I was reading this one journal article criticizing these movements as ignoring like cultural context. Like people, like, for example, me, I am Chinese, Vietnamese. I grew up with a lot of rice. Rice also means like a lot of emotional value to me as like both comfort and a staple and something that, you know, at any Asian person and a lot of other cultures we we can relate to. And I think in the effort to optimize nutrition, we ignore that emotional aspect and we can end up alienating a lot of people who would otherwise be ready to improve their lives through like diet and nutrition.
Yeah, no, and that's great. And I think we have to think about the cultural aspects of things. I actually, I've been to Saudi Arabia twice talking about global health system transformation with lifestyle medicine. And one of the things that they do that I find to be incredibly fascinating is that they have teaching kitchens that they build out in the community, and they have recipes that they transform into a healthier version of the recipe, and then they have judges, and then people actually win a prize based on, modifying the recipes into a healthier version, because I think we know more now today than what we did many years ago about, the nutritional quality of food, and we're really starting to be able to have talks about this and thoughtful consideration around it. I think one of the other things I really want to try to share is what would it look like if we thought about our emotions before we actually um, ate the food. And let me just share with you an emotion wheel. Yeah, so I would love for each and every one of you to think about this emotion wheel and think about how you're actually feeling in the moment. So oftentimes people will say, I'm feeling sad, so I'm going to go eat, or I'm feeling happy, so I'm going to go eat. But can you associate your emotions with how you're really feeling in the moment? And what does that look like in your association with food? I'm big on journaling, so I actually have a journal sitting right here next to me. And, when I'm really trying to come back to myself because we get really lost in this loud, noisy world that we live in, I really just start to think, oh, these are some thoughts that I'm going to have. And so, thinking about what are you feeling in this moment? And if you're feeling sad, is there something else that you can do instead of going to that food? Like, what does that look like for you? So, this is called, as you can see at the top, the Plutchik Wheel of Emotion. I have this on my phone in a saved photo so that I can check in with myself and I can see what my feelings are in that moment. And I think that's really important to honor our emotions. So, and all emotions are valid, right? So you can be happy, you can be sad, you can be frustrated, you could be fearful, you can be disappointed, you could be agitated, you could be all the things. So just because there's on one side of the wheel and maybe you thought it was a bad emotion growing up doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad emotion. All feelings are valid, and we want people to learn to feel their feelings. That's what raises the emotional intelligence of our world. And so, just being able to have these thoughtful consideration conversations around things. So, yeah. Any other questions that you have for us today, Jonathan, around emotional eating?
Mark, I think an important aspect of like emotional eating and like sticking to like any sort of nutritional plan is when you fall off the wagon. And that's something that's been discussed with throughout like my experience here with lifestyle medicine is when you lapse and relapse from the journey, the progress that you're trying to take. I wondered if you had any strategies to help prevent lapsing, and also what do you do when you find yourself lapsing out of good healthy habits?
Well, I think first understanding that we're never going to be perfect. That it is a journey and it's okay to be wherever you are on the journey. I think one of the most important things that I say is make the next bite count. Don't beat yourself up over past choices. We can't undo it. If you ate that half of a cake, you can't uneat it. You already ate it. Like, and if you want to be sad, grieve that for a minute. Like, I'm not telling you to not have the emotion. Have the emotion, make note of it, and then thinking about how we make the next bite count. The awesome thing is we're in control of our fork. We have the power. We hold the power of what goes into our bodies. And so just really starting to think about those things of why we're eating. I always say the who, what, where, when, why of food And if we really start to dig into that, that's going to help us to make more thoughtful decisions for ourselves. In our home, on our kitchen table, we actually have a chime. I have it sitting here, but you might not be able to hear it. It's a gratitude chime, is what I term it. So we actually ring the chime. We put our hands on the table. We take a few deep breaths. We move our nervous system from the sympathetic fight or flight, go, 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 go busyness of our day into parasympathetic rest and digest. And then we slowly eat and we think about how grateful for we are to have our food. We talk about what we're grateful for in our day. Yes, we may express our sadness and frustrations of the things that may have happened in the day, but we're also really thinking about being grateful and developing a good relationship with food, right? And that doesn't come overnight. So I think we're all going to have to accept the fact that we're on a journey and that people can come along and knock us off the rails of our journey. Oftentimes, friends, family can do that to us. You know, like we get together and we get into old patterns, and that's okay. But again, just making the next bite count and thinking about the who, what, where, when, why of food and the way it's really nourishing your body. You know, I always say, like, let us learn to love the food that loves us back, and then come into the supportive group medical visits in the Center for Lifestyle Medicine at UPMC, and look at our YouTube channel. We have a lot of resources there for you. My website, wholeheartedmedicine.org, has a ton of resources under the resource tab. It also has meditations and mindful eating under that tab. That's all free and available to you under wholeheartedmedicine.org. I have a Dr. Michelle Thompson on Facebook page, or reach out to us at the Lifestyle Medicine Department and join. We accept all insurance. So if you would like to come in and have a medical visit, you can call us at 412-647-8611. You could also email us at lifestylemed@upmc.edu. We are always learning and teaching. And so, you know, it's such a pleasure for me to be with my medical students and residents today, because they are the future of healthcare. And so for us to be able to have these thoughtful conversations and really to just change the trajectory of medicine is so powerful. So thank you for joining us today. Thank you for thinking about emotional eating and thinking about all the different archetypes and the who, what, where, when, why of food. And I'm just going to pass it around for any closing comments.
I'll close out. Just wanted to say it was great being part of this group today. Thank you for listening, and I really appreciate it.
Likewise, I think there's a lot of value in these conversations because it kind of brings us back to what, like, core humanity. Like, we all love food, we
Institutions
all
on
want to
here as
live
well. And
healthy
so,
lives. So how can we do that?
yeah, how can we do that? And how can we live our best life with beauty and grace, right? So come join us in the Lifestyle Medicine Department. Come join our emotional eating group medical visit. Have a visit with our integrative medicine dietitian, with myself, with one of our team members, with some of our coaches. It was such a pleasure to be with you today, and be well.